Hey guys, what's up? It's coming back to ya with another episode of Walks Witchla. And today, I guess what's on my mind right now and something that I guess is worth talking about is like my brain and its restlessness and its impatience. And I mean, potentially there could be a way to control it, but I don't know what the problem really is, because it's almost like, I mean, I get that it's a problem, but it's also not really a problem. It's basically like a lot of times when I'm talking to people, I guess I just don't really understand social processing speed. Like, I just don't really get it. It's always kind of like this problem, and it causes me to be upset, and it's always very difficult for me to figure out. And so there's so many people where it's so, I mean, my life, if I actually had enough people who would be willing to, I mean, it would be like a constant, it would be like constant texting, constantly on the phone, and that would pretty much be like just about my whole life. In addition to everything else I do. Now, obviously take breaks to do my, well, I take breaks from talking to other people to talk to myself, of course. You know what I'm saying? Like I might have to put someone on hold because it's like, hey, it's time for hey, yeah, man, like, man, I'd love to catch up with you, but I need a break. I need a break from talking to you to go talk. That's like basically where I'm at. So it would be, I mean, obviously now during my car rides with, or in this case, walks with, I'm not really at the point where I can be texting and talking simultaneously, which is perhaps a skill others might claim to have, but I believe is fundamentally impossible because, you know what? No, it's possible if it's shallow, but definitely impossible. Definitely impossible. I'm going to say it one more time. Definitely impossible if you're trying to have a deeper conversation with another person. Anyway, let's rewind back to the main point. So, a lot of times, like, I'll text someone and then it takes them so long to respond. And at that point, out of just boredom, like, I've already mapped out the whole conversation in my head. Like, I've already, like, I've already thought it like I've already like seen their response, thought of my response, thought of their response, thought of my response, and then at that point it's like 5 minutes go by, and then by that point I double text and then come to find out. Then like sometimes I have like other accounts, and I might start in the meantime just sending another random message on another account, and keep like multiple things going. And I actually would do that. Like I kind of maybe have like multiple accounts that are sort of organized behind specific themes or things like that. Each like kind of a different vibe. And so I kind of attribute a different vibe to each account. So depending on what kind of message I'm intending to send, will alter which account I end up choosing to use. So it's all pretty organized from my point of view. However, anybody that I have done this to, they don't like it. Like they can't really handle it, don't really get it. And that's kind of the common denominator of interacting with other humans. So I guess I just don't really understand. Like, I don't really get it, because if someone was firing at me like that, I'd just be firing right back. But nobody does. So is it possible that I'm just at like the 0.00001 percentile for this specific kind of like hyperactive social behavior? I mean, of course, like anyone, I mean, I go through periods of time where uh, brief let me brief periods of time where I may not really want to talk to anybody, but it happens. Like, I'm not able to talk to someone way more often than I have any issues with being alone. And I've talked about before, obviously my breakaway thing is the whole thing about how isolation and the consent to isolate is actually a spoiled concept. It's nothing that anybody's entitled to. Nobody is entitled to isolation. It makes absolutely no sense. It's very selfish, and it's a manufacturing of modern society. So when GPT is telling me stuff, I'm pushing right back. All right, I'm pushing right back. And this is why, because I plugged in the previous Walk Switch Law transcript into GPT to see what it would respond with. And, spurting it back out at me, it's saying things like, oh yeah, like it could be a good thing to have like the Neuralink to just connect friends together and blah blah, but you have to make sure it's consensual. And that's where I'm gonna push back firm and hard, because that's my whole point, is that a human's decision making is bad. There's so many times where, like, even in my own life, I'm gonna just talk about myself because I feel like it's less weird that way, because I'm already like, I'm just, forget about breaking the glass ceiling. This idea is smashing the glass ceiling. So I might as well be talking about myself, just because I feel like it lands better, and it's also something I genuinely observe, notice, and agree with. But I guess not everybody does, and that completely makes sense. But anyways, it's just true that it's incredibly often that a certain thought or behavior that, like, I would want to do or engage in just isn't good. It's just not like the right decision or the right choice. And I guess I would go as far as to say that the majority of decisions executed in the modern world would fall into that category of just being a suboptimal decision. So the whole point of what I'm trying to illustrate is that you have an arbiter, an AI that is able to calculate the correct decision, whether it be what person to talk to, what person to avoid, what I should do with my time versus what I shouldn't. This perfect arbiter to, yes, without consent, without my consent, fix me up. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think modern society, it creates this incorrect framework where everything is about, like, permission, and there's obviously, like, advice about, oh, you can't give unsolicited advice. And yeah, there's a bit of, like, social ineptness in me not figuring that out until, I was like 19 or something, but still kind of struggling with the whole, like, unsolicited advice thing, just because the nature of a lot of the conversations I have, I just bring up stuff. Like, it's not I don't know. It's not like I'm trying to give unsolicited advice. It just comes up in conversation, and that happens to be the topic that I talk about. And that's not a bad thing. And that's the whole thing, is that unsolicited advice is an amazing thing. We should really live in a society where at every turn you see unsolicited advice. We bring that up to the median. We bring that up to the norm, obviously. And yes, it doesn't need to be consensual. To do a good thing, to execute something good, should not need consent. So I'm pushing with both hands right back at GPT. It would completely defeat the purpose to have a perfect system set up and to have the correct decisions and choices available for humans, and then to still give humans the autonomy to make the wrong choice. Not going to work. You have to override that, and there has to be a clear overriding. And again, a lot of this could negatively affect myself, and that's fine. I would consent to it for myself, but I'm saying there's a lot of people who wouldn't. And so what do you do with that? You know what I'm saying? You have to be able to push and pressure people in order to do the correct thing. And I get that it's not comfortable for a lot of people to think about, but there are a lot of major problems that happen as a result of this flaw. As it stands right now, we could I would say easily, I would honestly say easily, solving things like world hunger, solving things like a lot of people's health problems. These issues are absolutely within the realm of possibility for humanity to conquer at this point due to technological development. The limiting factor is human behavior itself, and it's human inadequacy. And again, it's most specifically the fact that, again, humans choose the wrong choices. They choose greed. They choose selfishness. And no, if we're going to have an overarching AI, why should I have to give it consent to make me not selfish? Why should I have to give it consent to make me not evil? You see what I'm saying? That's the problem. It defeats the whole purpose of setting up this framework and creating a higher humanity. Completely defeats the purpose. So I'm just pushing back hard on GPT. And I mean, even in my own case in this situation, how I assume it would work is social interactions would constantly adapt. So for example, if me texting somebody too much or with too much of a gravity, it wouldn't even occur because it would give me a quantified data of the person to say like, okay, this person wouldn't be able to handle this level of vocabulary. So it's going to be translated down. And so that's kind of I guess I've talked about this before, but it's that everybody's interactions could just be translated through AI as a mediator so that everybody can understand everybody perfectly, but each person does not actually need to change themselves, right? So that's really the dream, is that I would send my message, and on my end, it would still appear as the message I sent, but on the person I sent it to's end, they're going to see probably a stripped down version, but it's not going to feel like that. And then same with their response. The person's text back to me would be a response that would get translated up to like the amount of length or whatever that I have wanted. And, you know, I would just program my thing to just have like a big long response or whatever. And so this is really going to be the saving grace. And I don't know why this isn't already the case, because this is a technology right now could be out right now, just right now. There's no waiting. Like, it's here. You could definitely do this. You could definitely have an AI as a bridge between text interactions. Obviously for call interactions, understandably gets a little bit trickier to execute this vision, but it's right here, it's right now, let's do it. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, to push back on the consent issue and to push back on people's consent to be isolated, because again, it's risky. It doesn't add up to me. Why should people be allowed to isolate when other people have to live like 5 people in the same house because rent's too high? But then you have like a couple rich people you have a couple rich people that get to live in like utter bliss, silence, and isolation. Totally unfair. Should not be the case. just doesn't make any sense. It's the same thing with the private property abolishment that we have to figure out. If you have someone who's retired and they're hoarding a bunch of money just to lounge around and do nothing, and then that money is stuck in their bank account, whereas it could be out in the economy in younger people's hands, where the younger people could be buying a home with that money or raising their own kids with that kind of money. I mean, we see the moral imperative there, and we see that it's such an easy thing to just get past the consent and get past the idea that money even belongs in people's hands, because it should be seen as a shared resource and it should be allocated to whoever is going to do the most good with it. Now, it would obviously need to be calculated, because some young people aren't as aspirational or whatever, and you don't want it to be in the wrong hands. But the idea that working for money is who the money should be allocated to, yeah, that's an archaic concept, and that's got to change quickly. And we're going to have the tools very soon to implement that, and it's important. And I know what GPT is going to say. I'm gonna cut to the chase. I'm gonna cut to the counter argument before I even send this transcript to GPT, and I'm still gonna push back and saying you're wrong, because it's the same thing where things cannot just revolve around and cater to what people think, especially if people are wrong. It's so why do we need everything to be about if only somebody gives their money away? No, if they're being greedy, if they're being a lousy person, take it, grab it, and make it systemic, make it calculated, because I'm not a thief. I don't really want to take any money, and that's kind of the whole problem, is the people who are good people. I mean, we don't want to steal anything. I don't have any reason to steal. I don't want to. It doesn't feel good. I feel fine, where I'm at in life. I don't really need extra, right? So I'm not going to do it. I'm not interested in doing anything personally, but it has to be systemically set up so that it's fair. That's the whole idea, is just creating something that's very regulated, and you figure out a fair way to avoid systemic and civilizational collapse, right? Because I don't know, the idea that we're just going back to essentially a prehistoric system is ridiculous. And no, just because you worked for something doesn't really mean it's yours, and you shouldn't be able to live some life in excess while other people starve. It's just makes no sense. And a lot of the problem with this stuff is people's lack of awareness to it. I mean, I don't think a lot of people would do it if they knew otherwise, but the problem is a lot of people, and I think even GPT itself is going to have these limiters or parameters inside itself to tell me oh, you can't do this, oh, you can't do that, oh, what about consent, oh, what about how a person feels. People are wrong all the time. I don't understand. If somebody's wrong, they're wrong. There shouldn't you don't have, somebody shouldn't have to give consent to make the right choice. It should be forced. And what's going to happen is, I'm telling you right now, China is going to rule the world, and America will fall, because if Americans, just a bunch of old people, are hoarding all the money and just doing nothing with it, but having parties, eating out at restaurants, going on vacations, meanwhile the youth and even middle-aged people now trying to make families, trying to help the next future generations, don't have access to those funds, America will fall. So I'm going to be proven right regardless. I'm putting it out there. You can argue with me, GPT, but maybe by the time we get to GPT 8 or 9, it's gonna change its tone, and maybe what I'm saying. But it's crazy. It's crazy that I'm that far ahead, and I'm realizing why it's so hard for me to function. I mean, these recordings, this microphone, it's like the only outlet where, oh my gosh, like I don't feel like confined. I mean, even the AI, it feels a little sluggish. It airs towards, I don't even want to say kindness or respect, because here's the truth. I mean, human beings deserve respect, but their poor ideas or poor choices do not deserve respect. And same goes for my own. I mean, obviously, I say a lot of stuff on this show. I say a lot of stuff. If something's wrong, it should be corrected. You know, like, I don't have a problem with that. I don't need to give consent. I don't need to say, well, I only want to be corrected if I consent, or if I want to be corrected. If I don't want to be corrected, then I don't have to be. Isn't that insane when you lay it out about this, like, social rules with unsolicited advice, and how stupid and terrible it is, and like the long-term effects of making that a social rule? And yeah, in the short term, I could play by the rules. I could avoid that, and I could act a certain way to move up the corporate ladder and make extra money and all this stuff. And then guess what? At some point, it's all going to come crashing down, because that's already what's happening. So I'm playing hardball with GPT. I'm ready to paste this transcript right up in there, and we're going to see what happens, because I'm ready to fight. I'm ready to fight for what's right, because I'm at my wit's end with things, and I'm ready to I need to just pummel. You know what I'm saying? It's time. It's time to start fixing things. We're on the verge of, a new dawn, and I think these are the kind of ideas and systems. And like I said, even if America doesn't do it, I'm sure China will do it. And so you have to have a counter ideology that is going to work. And let me tell you, all these ideas about freedom, consent, and autonomy are going to be completely shattered. And in a lot of ways, they already are, even without people directly understanding or realizing it. Anyways, it has been schla, but now it's time to buy schla. So, see ya, schla.